Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namini Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So today morning we'll be discussing from Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 4, chapter entitled chapter 18th chapter entitled Prithu Maharaj milks the earth planet, and text 8. So we'll read from this text. Nunam ta virudha kshina mai kalena bhuyasa tatra yogena drushtena bhavana datum arhati. Translation: due to being stocked for very long time, all the grain seeds within me have certainly deteriorated. Therefore, you should immediately arrange to take these seeds out by the standard process which is recommended by the acharyas or shastras. Purport. Purport is bit long, so we'll see. Maybe we'll cover the part of purport and then explain. When there is a scarcity of grain, the government should follow the methods prescribed in the Shastras, approved by the Acharyas. Thus, there will be sufficient production of grains, and food scarcity and famine can be checked. Bhagavad Gita recommends that we perform yajna, sacrifice. By the performance of yajna, sufficient clouds gather in the sky. And when there are sufficient clouds, there is sufficient rainfall. In this way, the agricultural matters are taken care of. When there is sufficient grain production, the general populace eats the grains, and animals like cows, goats, and other domestic animals eat the grasses and grains also. According to this arrangement, human beings should perform the sacrifices recommended in the Shastras. And if they do so, there will be no longer be food scarcity. In Kali Yuga, the only sacrifice recommended is Sankirtan Yagya. In this verse, there are two significant words, Yogena, which means by the approved method, and Drushtena, as exemplified by the former Acharyas. One is mistaken if he thinks that by applying the modern machines such as tractors, grains can be produced. If one goes to a desert and uses a tractor, there is still no possibility of producing grains. We may adopt various means, but it is essential to know that the planet Earth will stop producing grains if sacrifices are not performed. The Earth has already explained that because non-devotees are enjoying the production of food, she has reserved food seeds for the performance of sacrifice. Now, of course, atheists will not believe in the spiritual method of producing grains. But whether they believe or not, the fact remains that we are not independent to produce grain by mechanical means. As far as the approved method is concerned, it is enjoined in the Shastras that intelligent men in this age will take to the Sankirtan movement. And by doing so, they shall worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chaitanya, whose bodily complexion is golden and who is always accompanied by his confidential devotees to preach this Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. In its present condition, the world can only be saved by introducing this Sankirtan, this Krishna consciousness movement. As we have learned from the previous verse, one who is not in Krishna consciousness is considered a thief. Even though he may be materially very advanced, a thief cannot be placed in a comfortable position. A thief is a thief and he is punishable. Because people are without Krishna consciousness, they have become thieves. And consequently, they are being punished by the laws of material nature. No one can check this, not even by introducing so many relief funds and humanitarian institutions. Unless the people of the world take to Krishna consciousness, there will be scarcity of food and much suffering. Bhaktivedanta purports ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So in this verse, we see the background of this verse. King Vena, who is Prithu Maharaj's father, happened to be a very, very sinful king, not following the instructions of the Brahmanas, the priestly class, as well as not following the injunctions of the Shastras. And as a result, in order to save the suffering common subjects of the kingdom, who were all starving because of the scarcity of the food grains and because of the unruly way of conducting the kingdom of King Vena, the Brahmanas decided to dethrone King Vena, and he was subsequently removed as well as he perished. And his own son, who was born out of the churning of the body of his father, King Vena, King Prithu, who happens to be not an ordinary personality, but an empowered incarnation of Lord Krishna himself. He is called as Shaktya Vesh Avatar, who is a specially empowered incarnation of the Lord. He took over. And it is mentioned here, when King Prithu took over the running of the ruling the kingdom, he saw that there were many discrepancies in terms of how the necessities of life for the subjects in the kingdom were being provided. And he decides, for the well-being of the populace, general populace, and the subjects within the kingdom, he decides to immediately summon Mother Earth, and also later on takes various means of conducting sacrifices for the well-being and welfare of the people in general. So here we see the Bhumi Devi, Earth personified, has appeared in front of this very powerful king, King Prithu, and is pleading to the king, explaining the reason why she has withheld various resources within herself, including the necessary food grains, and what method this King Prithu should follow in order to obtain these facilities which are naturally provided by the nature in order to sustain and subsistence of the subjects people in general. So Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, two words in this verse are very, very important. And these words are yogena and drushtena. So this word yogena is translated by Srila Prabhupada in the later part of the purport as that which is enjoined by the Shastras, which is by the approved method given in the Shastras. And drushtena means that method has been confirmed, has been exemplified by the former acharyas. So we always see these check and balance system given in the scriptures of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. That means whatever details have been given in the Shastras, they have to be qualified, they have to be confirmed by the authorized parampara system, the acharyas coming in the authorized parampara system, and also confirms by the spiritual authorities, the spiritual masters. And in this way, if we follow those instructions, then Sarvena Sukhina Bhavantu. That means the overall goal of the Shastras is to make us happy in this life, but more important than that, to elevate us in the next. Whereas the goal of modern civilization is to exploit whatever resources are at our disposal by one means or another, by the mechanical means, and thus in the process degrade ourselves further, and to not accept the authorities of the higher personalities like the Devatas and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. And this part is very beautifully explained even in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, in third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Lord Krishna very much in detail explains how by the proper cooperation between the mankind and the higher authorities like the Devatas, the mankind in general, the subjects in general can perform their activities in the form of sacrifices to the Devatas, and Devatas in return will provide all the required necessities of life. And Bhagavad Gita explains, thus by the cooperation between the two, between the Devatas and the mankind, the life can be led very, very peacefully in this world, as well as elevation can happen after this particular life. But it is also explained in Bhagavad Gita that one who does not follow this prescribed method of what is that verse? Yagyarthat karmano nyatra. By performing our activities in the form of sacrifice, one does not follow this prescribed method, then invariably one actually takes the resources by not following the proper sacrifice, and thus one becomes a thief. The word used in Bhagavad Gita is Ishtan Bhogan Hit Vo Deva Dasyante Yagya Bhavita Tair Dattan Apradayabhyo Yo Bhungte Stena Evasaha. So the word used here in Bhagavad Gita is such a person who does not follow the path of following the prescribed sacrifices. He immediately becomes a stena. Stena eva saha. Stena means a thief. And Srila Prabhupada very elaborately explains in the purport as well as his classes on this verse that a thief, if you see any CCTV footage of a thief stealing, you will find that they are always in anxiety, not only during the act, but even after the act is committed, because there is always the tense situation or anxiety of they being caught by the law enforcement agencies, right? So Srila Prabhupada explains a thief can never ever be at peace and be happy. Similarly, the people of this age, if we don't accept the authority of the higher administrators, namely the Devatas, as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and still decide to exploit and enjoy the resources in this world for our own enjoyment, then we invariably become thief. One may think that we are utilizing our intelligence, we are utilizing our mechanical means to increase the food production, to increase the production of the milk by mechanical arrangements. But Mother Earth will retaliate, not just in terms of withholding the food grains, withholding the natural produce, but also if we try to exploit it, grab it by to the maximum means by the mechanical arrangement, then there will be side effect like they are seen in the case of the GM, the genetically modified food, or the milk that is taken out from mother cow by the mechanical arrangement. It is found to have its own set of issues on the human health. So we have to have total conviction in few facts. One is that the Shastras ultimately want all of our welfare, and they have given complete means for us to lead a peaceful life. Krishna has arranged everything required for gradual progression of our Krishna consciousness. And whichever are the incomplete things according to our own limited vision, we have to understand that this world is perfectly imperfect, which means that whichever are little bit gaps here and there we see, they have not been left inadvertently by the arrangement of the Lord, but these have been left purposefully so that we turn our vision towards the Supreme Lord and turn our attention and focus on returning back home, back to Godhead. So whatever is required to perfect ourselves in this life has everything been provided by the Supreme Lord. And we see so many examples in the Shastras, not just in the Shastras, but even in our practical life. Not so long ago, say 40, 50 years ago, we see generations back home in our homeland. People used to follow a very, very religious life, conducting all their religious duties in the morning and probably spending even a half a day in completing their morning daily routine in terms of the following the rituals and the worships and everything. And still, whatever time they used to give in fields, that was sufficient for their sustenance. So it is not that mankind has started feeding itself only now, and previously people, because they did not have the mechanical arrangement, they didn't have sufficient food grains. In fact, it is the other way around. Even though we have so many mechanical arrangement, we see the food scarcity and the hunger index has constantly been increasing despite all these advancement. So one important statement to understand: the source of income is not the source of maintenance. So the source of income might seem our own abilities, but the source of maintenance is ultimately Lord Krishna and his authorized representatives. So in this verse, going back to the verse, we see Mother Earth guiding King Prithu in terms of how he can leverage upon the gifts of Mother Earth by following the proper method approved in the Shastras and approved by the authorities. So with this, we conclude our discussion. Let us see if there are any comments or questions by the devotees. Hare Krishna. So you can raise your hand, or okay, Rupali Rana Mataji. Hare Krishna, Mataji, please go ahead. Are you able to speak up, Rupali Mataji?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dhanavad Pranam. Prabhuji, I've heard that in next 60 years the soil will become totally infertile all over the world. Some movement is also going on to save it.
So there are few factors in understanding this. First of all, Krishna is the overall maintainer, and he is definitely much more worried about maintaining all of us than any of us would ever be. So on one hand, while we should definitely make means to reduce the damage, to contain the damage that is being done to the ecosystem, to Mother Earth by the modern means, at the same time, it won't happen that Lord Krishna will let the subsistence of the mankind come under any threat. So having this concern is good, but I also recently read in Srila Prabhupada's purport that whichever such scares that the modern scientists keep spreading, that probably the Skylab is going to fall or Earth is going to collide with a certain planet. He exactly gives these examples. These are very much all faction of one's imagination, because he says the overall world is maintained by the authority of the Supreme, and ultimate annihilation is much farther. So while we should definitely take means to reduce the damage, to have a more a society consistently following the injunctions of the Shastras, exactly the overall annihilation or exact scarcity of food and all should not happen based on this principle, Mataji. Okay, and that we can understand based on the injunctions of the Shastras. Hare Krishna. Dinesh Prabhuji, Dr. Dinesh Saxena Prabhu, please unmute yourself.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
That means that earlier we used to plow the earth for agriculture production before preparing the field. But now it is mechanical device. So does it mean the devices are harmful to the Mother Earth and we should not use them?
See, if we carefully see the part of the purport here, Srila Prabhupada is exactly not denouncing use of the means. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, so Srila Prabhupada is not denouncing the use of the modern means, okay, provided we still acknowledge the authority of the Shastras, authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and use this in conjunction with those. But what he's denouncing is one's faith that these mechanical machines in themselves are capable of producing the food produce. That he is not agreeing. And he gives the example that how much ever these machines we use in an infertile land like that of the desert, it won't be able to produce the food grains. So Yeah, while it is not, hang on, yeah. So while we can use this, still, even if you see in many of the farm communities, it is not that, of course, as much as possible, devotees do try to use the Vedic means, but they are not exactly stopped from using the mechanical means. So we are not against the scientific advancement. We are against the atheistic propaganda that we are self-dependent on these means we invented by ourselves. Not really. Okay.
Additionally, Prabhuji,
Yeah.
In fact, earlier before sowing the Mother Earth, the land used to be worshipped or soil used to be worshipped before sowing was done. But this practice is no longer existent in the modern times, in fact.
Yeah.
Probably that is what is meant by yojana. Yojana means first worship the earth, then till and plow, and then sow the seeds. That is not being practiced now. Nobody worships the Mother Earth before sowing.
Yes, Prabhuji. And Srila Prabhupada is also giving reference to one particular verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, which is this. Okay, how one should worship. If we worship through this method, automatically earth will also be worshipped as well as properly respected, which is that verse, Yagya Sankirtane Prayer. What is the beginning? Krishna Varnam Tusha Krishnam Sango Pangastra Parshadam Yagyai Sankirtana Prayer Yajanti hi Sumedasa. So the word Yajanti in this particular verse means worship. Those people who are truly Sumedasa, who are truly intelligent in this particular age of Kali, will worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through Yagyai Sankirtanai, through the chanting of the holy names. And if we follow this method of worship, Prabhuji, then we will definitely have sufficient provision of all the necessities of life, including by Mother Earth. Okay? So that worship need not be separate, but to the Supreme Lord itself.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Let me see if there are no other questions or queries, we'll conclude our discussion today. Thank you very much. Vamcha kalpa tarubhyascha kripa sindhu evacha patitana pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Hare Krishna.